Hello, this is old Mr. Kent of MrKent.com, and I'm 82 years old and telling my life story. And by the way, at the end of this video, there's a link that says life story if you want to get caught up on previous videos. Anyway, and by the way, we're just in a construction zone this morning. No barking dogs, and so should be kind of easy, I think. Anyway, in my last video, I had gotten into motorcycles and repairing them and selling them and things like that. And we had a Honda 450. My wife and I would go for rides on it because it was big enough. Also, it had a fairing on the front, so it kind of looked like a miniature Harley. It was a lot. Of course, it was a lot different than the 60cc motorcycle that I was riding when I was in college. And so we would go from Pasco to Walla Walla and back, and go down to Pendleton. In fact, we went down and stayed in Pendleton all night one night and just had a nice weekend. So that was my motorcycle, and I didn't want to get rid of it very bad. It was a nice one. Meantime, I was fixing up old ones and selling them, and so anyway, then the pastor, he was a real heavy set guy, 6 feet tall, and he had been a motorcycle cop years before. And of course, back in those days, there weren't Japanese bikes, just Harleys, and he had ridden Harleys a lot. In fact, he had some stories about being was riding a night shift one time, and he rode by this alley, and he looked up the alley, and somebody was trying to load like a TV console or something like that into a trailer. So I went up to see what was going on, and the guy apologized for being a disturbance, but he worked so many hours that was the only time of day, middle of the night, that was the only time of day that he had to move. He was in the process of moving. And so the pastor, he got off his motorcycle and helped the guy get that loaded into his trailer and went on. Next day, when he came to work, he found out there was a burglary at that house. He didn't say anything to anybody. Kind of kept it to himself, I guess. Anyway, so he had a good sense of humor. Well, every morning I would come in at 5 o'clock, or come in before 5 o'clock, get the station going, and then as time went by, people would come in that worked there, and usually about 7:30 they would start coming in. And then after I'd get generally when I got the 8 o'clock program running, and it ran for half an hour. Then I had time to do other things. And so a lot of times I would go in and visit with the pastor and see what was the latest and things like that. And so I went in one morning, and he said, you know what, I think I'm going to get me a Harley Davidson motorcycle. And he said, I don't know if you want to go along, but I'm going to go down there and look at motorcycles. And I said, yeah, sure. Now, back in those days, Harley hadn't changed their image. Now that a Harley Davidson dealership looks like an automobile dealership, all fancy and everything. Back then, it was on First Street, across from the railroad station, and you didn't want to take your kids to the Harley shop with you because of the pictures on the wall. And then there was some scary-looking guys leaning against the wall outside on the sidewalk, smoking cigarettes as we went in. So we went in, we looked around, and back those days, the biggest motorcycle they had was called a Road King. Nowadays, excuse me, I got a cough. Nowadays, they have all kinds of models, but they didn't back then. So, we went in, we looked at him, and of course, he didn't want a small one. He was too big and too heavy. And so there was a blue one and a red Road King and they didn't have a whole bunch of motorcycles, but anyway, they had two. One was blue, one was red, and he asked me, he says, which color should I get? And of course, having had experience on motorcycles, I would get the red one because it's going to show up more, whereas blue always blends in with the road. And so, just a word for the wise. So anyway, so he bought the red one, and I followed him home in the car. And so then he had it, and of course, some of the guys there at the church, and we'd go riding together. And so he went on a ride with us within, I don't know, just a few days. And and so yeah, and then also I told him, because he was big and hard to do things, and I said, if you want, I'll ride that over to my place and wash it up and polish it for you. Oh yeah, he said, sure, do that. So then I got to ride a Harley Davidson motorcycle from his house to my house, which was less than a mile, but anyway, and so I did that and got it all polished up. That was a nice feeling, just riding that big old bike. So anyway, a couple weeks went by, and one day I went in to visit with him in the morning, and he said he wanted me to take over the payments on his motorcycle, on his Harley. And I said, what? Yeah, he said, because he had cancer in his kidney at one time, and they had to remove one of his kidneys. And so, looks like I'm going to have to turn around here. So he was down to one kidney, and recently it was starting to hurt. And so he went to the doctor, and the doctor said, well, what have you been doing recently? And he said, I got a Harley Davidson motorcycle, and that's about it. And he said, does it vibrate a lot? Yeah. See, this was back in the days when the motor wasn't rubber mounted. The motor and the frame were all bolted together in one piece. So when the motor vibrated, the frame vibrated. And so the doctor said, you better get rid of your Harley. So he asked me, he says, you want to take over the payments on my Harley, and I'll give you the payment book and stuff. And I said, there's no way I can afford payments on a Harley. And he said, I'm going to give you a raise just enough to make those payments, because you haven't had a raise in quite a while. And so that'll make it possible that you can take over the payments. See, basically, he didn't want to have to take it back or something like that. And he was already on a payment plan. And so now, later on, I found out that was against the rules of the loan company. But as long as I made the payments and kept the insurance up, it was no problem. So he gave me the keys, and I had me a nice red Harley Davidson full dress motorcycle, and didn't cost me a penny. So that was a blessing, and I rode it, and I mean, my wife was amazed. And the one thing I learned, by the way, just in case you're not familiar with motorcycles, I was going, first time I took it out on the road, I was going about 35 miles an hour, and came to a curve, and I couldn't get it to turn. And so it just didn't make sense. I couldn't get it to turn. Well, eventually, there was a truck coming in the other lane. I got really close to that truck, but I figured out what's going on. You see, I'll just stop right here with my handlebars. Let's say that I'm going down the road and I want to turn right, okay? Well, you can't turn right. If you turn right, well, first of all, let me show you. If I turn left and keep going straight, it's going to make the motorcycle lean that way, because it's going to fall out of the curve. And so going down that road with that pickup coming, if I'd have known that, I just give that a little bit of a left turn, the bike would bank, and I'd go around the corner. So basically, on a heavy motorcycle, you actually turn the wrong direction to get it to lean in the right direction, and then you follow in with it in turn. So I learned that really quick. I didn't know why it worked until years later. So anyway, now I had me a Harley Davidson motorcycle, and remember, I was still rebuilding old motorcycles. And so I thought, well, okay, I got a Harley. So I looked in the Giant Nickel again, and this guy, he was an old student of mine from when I was teaching in the high school, and he had a Harley Davidson Super Glide, which is the big engine. It kind of looks like a Sportster, but it's got the big full engine and everything. And it was a 1977 Super Glide. By the way, I got the motorcycle I got was a 1980, okay? And he had it for sale for $2,500. Now, they cost a lot more than that. But the tires were flat, wouldn't start. And so I didn't have $2,500, but I had $500. And so I went over and looked at it, and I knew I could fix it up. So I offered him, I'll pay you $500 now, and I'll get a loan on the rest and be back with more. Since he knew me, that was okay. So I got to turn around here too. So I bought me another Harley, a Super Glide. It wasn't a full dress or anything. It was just a nice bike. And by the way, it was much smoother to ride than the Road King. And just to make the story short, a year or so later, after I had the red bike, the Road King, I took it in and had the flywheel balanced, and it got really smooth. But I didn't know about that until after I got the Super Glide and realized there's a big difference. So then I had a Super Glide, and by the way, I took it home, pumped up the tires, put a new battery in it, put new plugs in it, started right up. So anyway, so then I had two Harleys. Can you imagine that? On the budget I was on, I had two Harleys, but I had to start making payments. But I had a neighbor. We lived on in our house, there was an easement road that went right by our house. And then there was a house behind us where a friend lived, and he had I can't remember what kind of a motorcycle. Anyway, I don't know if he even had one. I can't remember. Anyway, so I had that. I think he did. I think he had some kind of a Yamaha or something. And so I got the Harley running, and so I had two Harleys, and so I asked him if he wanted to take it out, and we'll go for a ride. So we went for a ride, and then in the evening on summer nights, we would hop on he and his wife on the Super Glide, me and my wife on the Road King, and then we'd go down to McDonald's and have coffee and all kinds of fun things like that. Well, so time went by, and I let him ride the Super Glide, and then finally I decided, I don't really need two motorcycles. So I asked him, I says, if you take over the payments I did the same thing that the pastor had done. Take over the payments, then, I'll let you have it, just like that. And so, wow, he was excited. He might even have given me a hug, I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, that was agreeable to him. He had follow the payment book and keep the insurance on it. And so that sounded like a good deal to him and me. So then gave him all that. He took the Harley over to his house. By the way, it had a kickstart on it. That's what was really fun. You see a little skinny guy like me trying to kickstart a Harley. Well, if you time if you set the points just right and timed it just right, you could a guy like me could kickstart it. And so anyway, so he takes the bike, and a month or two goes by, and he's riding that, and I'm riding mine. And then I get a call from the loan company for the Super Glide, and they say, we're going to have to come get the bike up because you've dropped the insurance on it. And I told them, I said, well, I let my neighbor take over the payments. And they said, well, that's fraud. We can't let you do that. We're going to come get it. Unless you go get it and start making payments. And I said, I'll go get it and start making payments. And so went over to my neighbor, told him the situation. Oh, he was mad. I said, I got to take it. I can't let you keep it because they'll come and get it anyway. And so he was mad. And after that, we were more like enemies than friends. He didn't, I know he lived next door, but he didn't care. Now, that was about in November, okay? Try to sell a motorcycle in springtime, they'll go fast. In November, when it's raining, try to sell a motorcycle. See how it goes. And so I couldn't really sell it at that time. I mean, I tried, nobody came. Now, this might take a little bit longer, but I'll explain. I don't know if you've ever heard, if you're old enough, you might have heard of Mason shoes, okay? Mason shoes were back from Wisconsin or somewhere. They were made back in super nice shoes, super comfortable. And they sent out catalogs every once in a while, and I had a catalog, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna see if I can make payments on this thing by going out and selling shoes door to door. And looks like I'm beginning to run out of time. So I'll end this video with saying I went out door to door selling Mason shoes, and in the next video we'll pick it up from there. How's that sound? Because I don't like to make them last too long. Anyway, so that's this morning here in Arizona. That's this morning's story, and I want to thank you for watching my videos and listening to my stories, and God bless.